I was in my gothic phase, still am, and my papito and I were not on good terms. He was hosting a family reunion auction, and so he went to New York to acquire some goods to sell. When he returned, he had a couple of big boxes full of jewelry. He tried to sweeten me up by telling me I could have first pick. I went down and had a look. This was in 2010 or so. There was a lot of gaudy stuff, but I did find a few things I liked okay. There was a surf sap bracelet, a Tupac chain to give to a crush, and a gaudy necklace that had a big leopard print base and then big gems on top. I came back upstairs and showed my dad my loot, and he was like, "That's all? Go down there and pick out some more before all the good stuff gets sold." I dug through each box carefully, but there were mostly just duplicates of the same jewelry, and a few others that were too corny for me. Then I took a final look in the box and found a necklace that didn't fit it. It had a wooden carved skull as the amulet, and the necklace was made up of miniature white skull beads. I smelled it, and it had a distinct smoky and sweet aroma. I was excited because it was goth-looking. I showed it to my dad, and he said that he didn't remember getting that necklace, but shrugged it off. It was too small for my head, so I cut the string and extended it with some hemp I had. From that point, I never took it off. Now, at the time, I had already had a lot of magical experiences and felt a bit like an outcast. My lunch number was 10666 for crying out loud. My friends were fascinated by the necklace. One of them touched it and said he felt like it didn't want to go to him. Later that morning at school, I made a joke about that same friend getting sick from the school's chocolate milk, only for seconds later, for him to start puking after drinking a carton. Next were people claiming they were getting weird texts from nowhere that said hex when seated next to me. I was at my lunch table, and one of the girls who sat there was genuinely terrified of me for some reason. I was getting tired of all the witch jokes and teased the whole table that I hope they all didn't get food poisoning. The next day at lunch, only 2 people of the 8 were there. I asked where the others were and was told they called out sick. Then I was in Spanish class, and the witch jokes continued. A kid wanted to skip class and told me to give him a headache so he could leave. Now, this kid, to be fair, believed magic was nonsense and that I was attention-seeking. He more so wanted to embarrass me. I told him, "Ta-da, you have a headache." Nothing seemed to happen. But then about 30 minutes later, he started grabbing his head and asking me what I did. I was like, "Come on, man." He said, "No, I'm serious." He then got permission to leave class to go to the nurse's office. Again, I felt like the witch jokes were getting stale. So then I'm on the school bus, and one of the girls I considered a friend was making fun of another girl who had a cold sore, saying she had herpes. I stood up and told her to stop bullying the girl, or it could happen to her next. 2 days later, she got on the bus covering her mouth, saying, "This is your fault." I was like, "What?" She moved her hands away, and she had a huge cold sore on her lip. This is where things took a turn. My sister and I got into an argument, and I told her I hoped she wrecked her car. One day, when I got home from school, my dad sat me down and showed me a photo of my sister's totaled car. My nephew had been in the car as well. They were all okay, but this terrified me. I was scared to make jokes or say anything I would regret. Word had spread at my school and on my school bus that I was a witch. Another atheist friend of mine was defending me on the bus ride home one day. He was saying witches weren't real and that he would prove it for once and for all. He asked me to tell him something that would happen, and to be specific. I told him, as he got off the bus, he would trip over his shoelaces, fall down the bus stairs, and bust his knee on the asphalt. As the ride continued, we were joking and chatting and laughing, and I honestly forgot about what I said. We all did. As Daniel got off the bus, he turned and waved goodbye to me. As he stepped off the steps, he tripped over his shoelaces and fell onto his knees on the asphalt. He stood up and pointed at me and said, "You're really a witch." I cannot describe how that moment felt for me. Like time was moving slow, like reality was bending. It was so bizarre. My friend looked fearful and confused. The bus was silent. I got off my stop feeling ashamed. Well, it gets stranger. During summer vacation, some relatives wanted to travel to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and see the Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum and the aquarium too. I had a young cousin who went as well. He was about 8 at the time. I was having a blast at the museum. We were looking at a display of the tallest man who ever lived, and we went through a few display cases that had Native American artifacts, which I relate to as an indigenous Brazilian. Finally, my papito said it was time to head back, and we were passing by another case of African artifacts. My cousin started screaming at me, "Look, look!" I was like, "What?" He said, "It's the same as yours." As I turned and looked into the African artifact case, the exact necklace I was wearing was on display. 2 of them, in fact, showing the front and back of the model. They were identical. Yet again, the world was spinning and I was so confused. The case said the necklace was theorized to be a healing necklace, but it wasn't for me. It was like a tool to amplify words. It was shocking. I actually submitted my story to a Glitch in the Matrix YouTube channel and figured I would share it here as well. I always believed in magic and felt lucky that I got to experience it. But to be honest, I believed this was all a big prank being pulled on me by my peers until I saw my sister's car wrapped around a light post. And then when my friend fell, it made it more real. When I saw the same necklace at the museum, I didn't know what to think. How did I get it? How did my papito go to New York to buy cheap jewelry for an auction and end up with this artifact? And why did we randomly travel so far to Gatlinburg and happen to see its sisters in a display case at a museum? What was it trying to show me? I think now how hilarious it would have been to have taken a photo next to the display wearing my necklace with the ones in the cases beside me and submitting that to Ripley's Believe It or Not. But at the time, I hid my necklace worrying they would think I stole one of the displays. Anywho, this is one of many supernatural stories I have experienced.
This story takes place over a year span after the first story, while I was 15-16, so here goes. My sisters decided to go visit my uncle while he was working on some of the framing of our new house, which was something that wasn't all that uncommon for us. We lived on the same block where our house was being built, and you could actually see it from the front yard of our current house. At this point, though, the house was just the wood framing with that heavy plastic that's actually pretty hard to see through all around it. Anyways, they were talking with my uncle in the garage of the new house, which was all the way in the back of the house, when they heard my dad start yelling and screaming horrible things. They could hear him yelling about how he was going to hurt himself and put himself down permanently. Of course, they all went running in the direction where they heard him yelling to stop him, which was in the master bedroom toward the front of the house. When they got there, nobody was there. They looked everywhere and couldn't find my dad. My 2 sisters and my uncle later decided not to repeat that story, thinking maybe it was a flux. I never heard this story until this next story, which happened almost a whole 2 years later. At this point, we had finally moved into our new house. It was amazing, honestly. My family of 8 finally fit comfortably within a home and no longer felt crowded. We even had room for guests to come over and still not be squished together. So one night, my sisters decided to invite over our cousin we got along with at the time. That same night, my parents decided they wanted to go coyote hunting and left me in charge of all the kids. Being the oldest, I was quite used to being left in charge of the younger kids at any time of the day or night and for long periods of time, so this wasn't new for any of us. I personally preferred nights when I was left in charge. For me, it was easier. All I had to do was make sure everyone was fed, clean, and that the younger kids were sleeping by a decent time. On this particular night, I decided to have the younger kids go to sleep early-ish so that us older kids could watch movies and snack on the things our cousin had brought over without interruption. So us older kids decided to hang out in my sister's room, which was the second closest bedroom to the garage, with my room being the closest. As we were all hanging out and laughing with each other, we heard my dad yell that they were home from the garage. We all looked at each other really confused because they hadn't left all that long ago, and it was pretty early for them to be back so soon from coyote hunting. The other kids asked me if we should go greet them in the garage, but I felt a little funny about it. But of course I wasn't going to say that. Instead, I told them to let them take their time coming in, that they probably wanted to smoke before coming in, and they'd have to walk past the room we were in to get to their room anyways, and we'd say hi then. They all agreed and we went on visiting. After 15-20 minutes, we realized that they never came in, which was really odd. The kids asked me at this point if we should go look in the garage, but I still had that really weird feeling, so I told them no and locked the door that went to the garage instead. I then went to look out our side window, where you could see the driveway and part of where we park the cars that don't go in the garage. While looking, I see that their car doesn't appear to be here, but what's more disturbing to me is the fact that there are no fresh tire tracks in the fresh snow, meaning that they were never here. At this point, I can't really hide my panic and tell the kids to go shut and lock the younger kids' rooms where they were sleeping, and then lock themselves into a room as well. I then decide to call my parents and explain what we heard and ask them if maybe they came back and left without saying anything. They tell me they never came back and rush home. My dad then does a sweep around the house with his shotgun and checks the garage, but there's nothing that even suggests someone was there that night. My parents and I decide maybe we heard the TV and scared ourselves, and we all return to our rooms to go to sleep. After that night, whatever was in our house started taking a particular interest in me for some reason. Almost every night I'd hear things getting thrown in the attic above my head while I was trying to sleep or something walking. Some nights it decided that wasn't enough, and not only would I hear somebody walking in the attic, but something being dragged behind it. This was an every night occurrence, and no matter how many times I tried to tell somebody about it, nobody believed me, and especially not my parents. That is until it started happening to my sisters in the next room over. They also started hearing the noises in the attic, and not too long after my mom did too. It got to a point where we all had heard it, except for my dad. Once we all heard it, that's when I think it started watching me, even during the day. I'd be in the kitchen alone cooking and suddenly feel like there was somebody behind me just glaring at me. I'd feel frozen and feel prickly as it would look me up and down, like I could feel where its eyes were at almost. Then I'd turn around and of course there was nobody there. All of this made everyday life inconvenient, but we would sage and put out spirit plates, just an FYI, we are enrolled Native Americans that live on the res, and hope for the best. Then, one night, I decided to take a shower late at night. This is something that I didn't do often at the time, as I was more of a shower in the morning kind of person. However, that night I did, and I got out of the shower and went to my room to get dressed. As I was getting ready for bed, I started hearing the noises in the attic again, but in a much more fast-paced motion than I had ever heard before. Instead of walking, it was running back and forth and dragging something behind it. Then from the corner of my room, I heard what sounded like a little girl laughing. I stopped, obviously, and just stared at that corner for a long time before continuing to get ready for bed. In my culture, we had been taught the more fear you show these things, the more control it has. So I tried my hardest not to be scared and crawled into my bed to go to sleep for the night. Things were pretty stagnant after that, with nothing progressing beyond the sounds in the attic or the feeling of being watched. But then late spring hit, and without the rest of us knowing, my second to younger sister started having dreams. Well, nightmares to be more exact, but dreams nonetheless. In her dreams, she was playing with a ball, and the ball rolls toward the edge of the woods. She then would go to retrieve the ball, and a shadowy man figure wearing a tall top hat. He then tells her she needs to start a fire within the house or he would hurt the whole family. She has this dream almost every night until eventually she gets so scared she does it. Fortunately, the house and everyone inside was fine, but this finally is the straw on the camel's back. We eventually got into a contact with a family friend who gave us advice on how to get rid of whatever this thing was, and it did go away. But that thing, whatever it may be, was the scariest damn thing I've ever dealt with, and I truly hope I never have to deal with it again.